they had to wait. So if you're gonna wait, like anyone that has locks, and if you lose a strand of a lock, especially a long one, it weighs. It's a heavy hair because it's matted. It's matted and then it gets all tangled up together. So what are some critical analysis of Absalom are trying to prove that Absalom actually did have the hair? I would say in the case of Absalom, how he died in the Bible. He was trying to flee away from some soldiers, and as he was running, his hair got tangled and was caught up in a tree. Didn't say anything about his hair being braided, and the hair was able to hold his whole body weight. That has to be a lot of tangledness in order for a tree branch to be able to hold that. Okay, first, yeah, the tree branch had to be heavy. That is right. But just remember, the hair had to tangle as the horse was running through. Wasn't like someone went to go knot it and tie it. He was running fast, passes through a branch, the branch hooks it, and pull him. I only know some few hairstyles that can pull that off. That's how Absalom comes in, and that is how King Solomon comes into the story, right? So we're trying to defend a lot of people in the Bible how they're named. Elijah because of John the Baptist, and he was brought in the spirit of Elijah. King Solomon because of Absalom. Absalom because of his hair got tangled in a tree. He was running on a moving horse. The horse wouldn't be strolling. The horse was speeding because he was running from his life. He lost the battle. And that was where he died. If only he cut his hair or he wore a helmet. But how can he even wear a helmet when the hair is all out? Unique type of helmet. That's gonna be really messy. The NFL players with locks, like people that play the American football that have locks and wear the helmet, you can literally see it. Like as soon as they're done with their first play, they take off that helmet. Yeah, we didn't look into that. Maybe we should have looked into it. Now that I think about it, they have a lot of NFL players with locks. We should have looked into that. We didn't. Then we also have Apostle Paul. Apostle Paul cuts his locks and then later paid for 4 men to fulfill their Nazarite vow. So this is where Apostle Paul also joins the list because of after he cut his hair and then he now paid for 4 other men while he was doing his Nazarite vow. He had to pay for not he had to, he wanted to. Apostle Paul wasn't a peasant. He was Pharisees of Pharisees. Like he was in the elite. Like he was actually there when they were stoning Stephen and he was like, you're keeping the scripture. He was like Rabbi Nicodemus. Not Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Shmuel was he's a fun rabbi. We love Shmuel. We're talking about Rabbi Nicodemus. He was like, Apostle Paul was like, he was in the league of them Rabbi Nicodemus. These are the people that their scripts and their letters in the Talmud are still debated till today. Their interpretation of the verses of the Bible, what is true, who is the Messiah, where's the Messiah coming from, how can this be? So that's why his conversion was a huge blow. And that was why he was able to write and write and write. Because he, like Apostle Paul is like, I may have not seen Jesus Christ of Nazareth, but he's in me. Like, he had written a lot. Like, also this guy, Jairus, the secretary, the scribes of Rabbi, or the librarian. Let's call him the librarian because he was the one that kept all their texts. So we have that, right? He also could testify to that. I'm not saying Jairus had locks. I'm just talking about the connection between Apostle Paul, the rabbis, the Pharisees, and how he came about. So Paul, in 1 Corinthians 11:14, he also criticizes. I'm going to quote his critics just in case someone pulls it out. He said, does not even nature itself teaches you that if a man has long hair, it is a disgrace to him? Maybe this is the reason why he decided to cut his hair. But remember, Apostle Paul was a Roman citizen. Any of you that have read the Meditation, the Stoics, anyone that read about Stoicism, if you read their books, Seneca and the rest, you will see Apostle Paul there. They write about Apostle Paul. Right? I remember first day I was reading it and I see Apostle Paul. I was like, wait, is it that Apostle Paul? And yes, he is your truly Apostle Paul. In the Greco-Roman cultural context, he was writing that when he wrote to the Corinth, a Greek city. So he's writing to them and telling them about their culture. And it's like, hey, even we agree it is just not natural for men to grow hair. That's their belief, nature, and their culture. But the strongest connection to Apostle Paul was the ritual after he cut his hair and also paying for the ritual for 4 other people. That's how he made the list, right? So how did this biblical story, how did this culture of locks get all the way to Asia and Africa? Because I know it's mostly Asia and Africa that have this child king and actually puts this as a divine religious spirituality on the hair context. How did this get there? How did it get to Asia? So we have Thomas, doubting Thomas, one of the 12. Matter of fact, Mary Magdalene had tried to touch Jesus when they went to the tomb, when they first of all saw him and they found out, and he was like, no, you can't touch me. Can't touch this. But when he came to Thomas, Thomas was the only, he showed up to Thomas and was like, hey, touch my hands. In 722 BC, After the Assyrian army invaded Israel and during their time in Babylon, 10 tribes got missing. The 10 lost tribes. I would say more. I would say maybe 10 and a half. No, yeah, 10 and a half tribes got missing. That would be my estimate because not all the Levites were missing. And let's just leave it there. No need to get into this conspiracy. All right. Let's just think like they have 10 missing tribes and they fled south down to Africa. Some went all the way to Asia. And according to some other texts, some went to other places. So what are some evidence? We say Samson have very strong evidence. We say Absalom, somewhat weak. Solomon, one step weaker than Absalom. Elijah and John, I'm giving Elijah and John very, very strong evidence with Elijah and John. But based on my analysis, it also drops it down to weak, like 2 points. Ezekiel, like 1 point. What is going on? I didn't make this. I just put it in an algorithm and ran it. And, he gave it. Like Ezekiel? He dreamt and they picked him up. He literally said, but let's keep moving. So that's the Bible, right? Critical analysis. We have evidence to support them. I explained it step by step. What requires more review? What requires more understanding? I've laid it out. King Solomon, Absalom. They also have some lost scriptures. There's some lost scriptures that really falls down on this, right? Maybe if you look at some lost scriptures like in the book of the War of the Lords, the book of Jireh. Okay, when I spoke about Jireh, the librarian, I don't think it's this same time. But it could be him because the book of Jireh or Jaas is going to be like the book of Jaash, the upright one, because he was the librarian. So he would read a lot of that. The manner of the king, the book of description of the land, the book of the covenant, Acts of Solomon, Chronicles of Kings of Israel, Chronicles of Kings of Judah, right? There are a lot of books that refers and brings this Nazarite vow and also talks about the hair, the texture, and the rituals of some of the kings and some of the old people of back in the days cutting their locks. The visions of Idol, the seer, acts of God, the seer, there are a lot of them. That builds on this concept and builds up on the spirituality. So we end with Samuel. So if you think about it, right, the last judge in the Bible, Samson, we're clear that he had locks. The last prophet that ruled, which is Samuel, he had locks. Clearly stated he was a man with long locked hair. I think in some passages in the Bible, they actually put beautiful long locked hair. Don't quote me on that, but I think I read that. That's why most movies, when they try to depict Samuel, they don't make his hair locks, but they make his hair very long and he's always good looking. Even when they don't blend the hair with the actor, it's like, what? Like, where did you get this good looking hair? Like, couldn't you find some, like, he has all these rough clothes and then they'll just have his beautiful hair. I'm like, what? Those are the biblical stories. This is where we get the biblical text. And then we move on. We have the Dead Sea Scrolls of 1947. We have the Nag Hammadi of 1945 and different texts that builds on this. Every civilization that has had hair grow naturally develop locks. So now we're getting into pre-modern era. We're looking at their kings, we're looking at their priests, we're looking at their prophets, and we're looking at their children. Usually the children from kings, the children from prophets, the children from priests. A 4D hair passed down through generation, passes down through bloodline. And even minus that, if a kid grows up and they see their dad, that he keeps locks, that is something that the kid is gonna want to talk about. So now this leads me to other religions than Christianity. Because we try to cover religions before we get into culture. And here there's some classic texts that talks about Prophet Muhammad and how he had 4 braids. I need to get that right. Or did he braid his hair in four segments? And they said his hair was long enough to be between his earlobe and his shoulders. So I'm going to let a contributor that knows more about the text to speak about it and expand about it. Now, I'm not saying he had locks. But if you go back to the beginning of what a starter locks looks like and how it grows, and even in their modern text, some of them in their modern text actually argue and they actually say that this could be a thing. But I'll let the Imam speak and we will leave it at his contribution and move on.